can take one. Yes, yes. You are right.
So I want us to discuss how to do a strategy. I'm giving you just one or two things. I was worried about what on yesterday. Today is worse. I guess it's on the switch.
Honorable Senators, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, yes.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings. As your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic, we seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Okay, next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Senator Mutula, you can read. Yes.
Thank you, Speaker. This is a statement by the Senate Majority Leader on the business of the Senate for the week commencing Tuesday, 8th October 2019, pursuant to Standing Order number 52-1. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order number 52-1, I hereby present to the Senate the business of the House for the week commencing Tuesday, 8th October 2019. On Tuesday, 8th October, the Senate Business Committee will meet to schedule the business of the Senate for the week. On that day, and subject to further directions by the SBC, the Senate will consider bills due for second reading and the business that will not be concluded in today's order paper. On Wednesday, 9th and Thursday, 10th, the Senate will consider bills at the second reading stage, bills at the committee of the whole stage, motions, and any other business scheduled by SBC. With respect to bills, there are currently 17 bills due for second reading and 9 bills at the committee of the whole stage. I urge respective movers of the bills and committee chairpersons with amendments to avail themselves to transact the business whenever they are scheduled by the Senate Business Committee. Honorable Senators, with respect to the status of petitions, the House has a total of 49 petitions pending conclusion in the Senate. There are petitions under consideration in the following committees. Standing Committee of Lands, Environment and Natural Resources, led by Mwangi Githiomi, 25 petitions. Standing Committee on Labor, Social Welfare, led by Sakaja Johnson, 6 petitions. Standing Committee of Health, led by Dr. Mbito, 4 petitions. Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs, Human Rights, led by Gerard Gay, Senator, 4 petitions. Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation, led by Senator Wamatangi, 3 petitions. Standing Committee on Devolution, Intergovernmental Relations, Senator Kinyua, 2 petitions. Standing Committee on Education, Senator Dr. Lagat, 2 petitions. Standing Committee on Finance and Budget, Senator Mahmood, 2 petitions. Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations, led by Senator Haji, 1 petition. I urge the respective committees to expeditiously conclude and table the reports on the said petitions. This is a mandatory requirement pursuant to Standing Order number 232 of the Senate. The particulars of the petition are attached on this statement for those who would like to make very quick references. Honorable Senators, likewise, there are a number of statements pending response by various standing committees. I urge respective committees to consider the statements and make reports to the House pursuant to the standing orders. Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you and lay the statement on the table of the Senate. Thank you.
Next order. Okay, I direct that we go back to paper so that they can be laid by the leader of majority who is now in the House.
Order number 5, papers.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Thursday, 3rd October 2019. Number 1, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Trans Nzoia County Elimu Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. Number 2, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Lamu County Fisheries Development Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. Number 3, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Lamu County Bursary and Scholarship Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. Number 4, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Bungoma County Assembly Staff Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. Number 5, annual county government budget implementation review report for the financial year 2018-2019. Finally, the Kenya Law Reform Commission annual report for the financial year 2018-2019. I thank you.
Okay, next order.
Order number 8, motion. Approval of the county government's cash disbursement schedule for financial year 2019-2020, division.
I wish to rearrange the order paper for the convenience of the House and move to order number 9.
Order number 9, the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood Bill, Senate Bills number 10 of 2019.
This resumption of debate. Senator Mwenyehaji.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia mswada wa sheria ya wauzaji bidhaa rejareja barabarani. Mheshimiwa Spika, mswada huu umekuja katika wakati mwafaka kabisa kwa sababu tumeona kwa muda mrefu wachuuzi wengi wanaofanya biashara zao ndogo ndogo barabarani wanasumbuliwa na maafisa wa county pamoja na polisi kwa sababu hawana sehemu maalum iliyotengewa kuweza kufanya biashara zao. Mheshimiwa Spika, atakana ikumbukwe kwamba katika biashara hizi kila mfanyabiashara amewekeza rasilimali yake, na rasilimali ile inamsaidia kupata chakula cha kila siku, vile vile inamsaidia kusomesha watoto wake, na wale wanaokaa katika miji ambao wamepangisha nyumba inawasaidia pia kuweza kulipa nyumba na kuishi maisha yanayofaa kwa binadamu. Mheshimiwa Spika, pia itakumbuka kwamba hii ni biashara moja kubwa sana kwa sababu katika kila county na kila mji kuna wafanyabiashara kama hawa ambao wanafanya biashara kila siku kuwezesha kuendesha maisha. Kwa hivyo inachangia pakubwa uchumi wa nchi yetu ya Kenya. Japokuwa inasemekana kwamba biashara haina mwongozo, lakini ni wakati sasa sheria iweze kuingia na kuweza kuwapa mwongozo wafanyabiashara kama hawa. Mheshimiwa Spika, itaonekana kwamba biashara hii wengi wameidharau kwamba ni biashara inayofanywa na watu wadogo wadogo ambayo mara nyingi hawana mtaji mwingine wote wa kuweza kuwapatia chakula. Lakini kwa kazi wanaofanya Mheshimiwa Spika ni kazi kubwa kwa sababu inasaidia pakubwa kupunguza ukosefu wa kazi, inasaidia pakubwa Mheshimiwa Spika kuleta bidhaa karibu na wananchi kama vile ambavyo inahitajika kwa sababu mara nyingi bidhaa nyingi zinakuwa shida kupatikana. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, biashara hizi pia zinasaidia wale wenye biashara kubwa wanaoleta mali kwa wingi kuweza kupata njia rahisi ya kuweza kufanya biashara yao na kuregesha rasilimali zao bila ya kutatizika. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba ni lazima sheria iweze kusaidia wafanyabiashara hawa ili wasiweze kunyanyaswa na kudhulumiwa na maafisa wa kaunti ambao wanajaribu kuchukua fedha na vile vile pia kuchukua mali zao kiholela. Mheshimiwa Spika, ipo haja katika miji yetu mikubwa, kwa sababu soko ambazo zimejengwa mpaka sasa hazitoshi kuwafaidi wafanyabiashara wote, na kila siku wafanyabiashara wanachipuka wapya wageni ambao hawawezi kupata nafasi ya kufanya biashara zao katika soko zile. Kwa hivyo ipo haja ya kuweza kutenga maeneo maalum ambayo wafanyabiashara watakuwa na fursa ya kufanya biashara zao, aidha ni Jumamosi na Jumapili ama hata katikati ya wiki baada ya saa za kazi rasmi. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, sheria hii inaweza kusaidia masuala kama hayo. Vile vile pia Mheshimiwa Spika, sheria hii inaleta nafasi ya serikali za kaunti kuchukua sehemu fulani ya fedha kutoka kwa wafanyabiashara hawa kama kodi ama leseni ambazo watalipishwa. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba leseni hizi zisiwe na kiwango ambacho kitaweza kuwaumiza wafanyabiashara hawa, ili faida yao yote inakwenda kulipia leseni. Mheshimiwa Malala jana alizungumzia kwamba kule Kakamega wanalipisha shilingi 50 kwa kila siku, ambayo inakuwa ni 1500 kwa mwezi, na kwa mwaka inakuwa 1018, ambayo ni pesa nyingi kuliko ile ambayo mfanyabiashara ambaye ana duka rasmi halipi kodi kama hiyo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, sheria kama hii isitumike kuendelea kuwagandamiza na kuwanyanyasa wafanyabiashara wadogo kama hao ambao wanajitafutia nafasi ya kuishi katika ulimwengu ambao una changamoto nyingi. Mheshimiwa Spika, inafaa pia kuangalia kwamba sheria hii itatoa nafasi ya kuweko zile tunazoita soko maalumu, kwa Kiingereza periodic markets. Kwa mfano kule sehemu za pwani, ukitembea katika kila mji katika barabara ya kwenda Lungalunga ama barabara ya kwenda Kilifi, utapata kwamba kuna siku maalumu ya soko ambazo wafanyabiashara wadogo wamewekewa ili waweze kupata ruzuku zao bila ya matatizo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mswada huu tunaunga mkono na tutarajia kwamba utakapopitishwa tutaweza kuhakikisha kwamba kaunti zetu zinafaidi pakubwa wafanyabiashara wadogo. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Ephraim Maina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to contribute to this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important bill, especially in this time of Kenya when our people are going through economic hardship. Life is difficult. Mr. Speaker, the so-called hawkers are actually traders who have just come in an ingenious way of creating employment, because some of them, they work and finally they end up with some business. Mr. Speaker, the way we have been treating these people, the way the county askaris have been treating the hawkers, the way our security agencies have been treating the hawkers, Mr. Speaker, it denotes a state where there is no recognition of human effort to better the lives of the people in this country. Mr. Speaker, I support the bill because at least it recognizes that a hawker is not an unlawful person who is living through an unlawful means. He is somebody doing his job. And Mr. Speaker, let us cast our eyes all over the world. Even in the developed nation, there is no single city you go and there are no hawkers. Not a single one where there is free enterprise. You go to Washington, you go to London, you go to Tokyo, anywhere you go, these people are there. And what we expect our society to do, what we expect the county government to do with the large sums of money that they are getting, is not to employ some club-wielding askaris to go harassing these people. It is to organize these people who are actually paying some of them licenses and actually have them doing a job in an organized manner. Mr. Speaker, I would say we should, in this act, and I think the chairman should ensure that there is a law against harassment of hawkers. And the law should go further, putting the penalties and the punishment that will be muted against the council askaris, the so-called kajus. Because, Mr. Speaker, it is the most unsightly thing. Ordinary mamas with their children on their backs are chased, you know, they go trying to hold their wear, and this is a most unsightly thing. For what reason? For only one reason, corruption. Because most of these hawkers have to pay dearly to survive. In fact, I could say, even the kiosk owners you find on the roadside have to pay dearly to survive. Not just a simple license, but they have to pay dearly to the systems that we have set. Mr. Speaker, I sometimes feel ashamed when we talk of the county governments and the large sums of money that we are pumping into them. And I want to say, so far we have pumped over 1.8 trillion to the counties. You go around this country, every county should be able to see a project serving the people, either a modern hospital, either a modern school. But you go around this country, what do you witness? You witness, you know, big cars moving around, you know, and there's no money to pay small things in the counties. There are no drugs in the dispensaries. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this act should go further and put obligation on the county government to ensure that the hawkers are given their own right. And let me say, these people could be bigger contributors of our economy than they are. Mr. Speaker, if we cast our eyes and imagine the way this country is, there is a big unemployment. And the best thing we can do is to actually encourage mwananchi. I would like to see a county government which comes up with some simple funding, where they could say, anybody with a good idea, you know, maybe whether a hawker, will advance them some small loan, the way Akina Mamas come together and they are contributing. Some simple money, like 300 million a year. It would go a long way in changing the lives of these people and this country. Mr. Speaker, I am a bit careful to state that we should have designated areas. Reason being, where the hawkers are is where the business is. If you see hawkers next to a bus stage, it's because that's where people come and they alight and then they come to pick the vehicles. Therefore, they buy when they are getting the vehicles. What will happen, and I have seen this in some counties, is that the hawkers are going to be removed from there and put in some corner where nobody goes. It is not going to help. Therefore, I think this act should come up with a committee of various leadership in the county, which will be able to look at the area that can be designated as an area for the hawkers to do their business. But if we just say that the county government will come up with an area, they will come up with an area at the corner of town. The people in Nairobi who are coming to here down Machakos bus stop is because that's where the people come, alight, and board the buses. There's no need of removing them from there and taking them somewhere in Iruai, in some open ground, and you say, we have designated a hawkers police here. Hawkers choose where to be. And that's why in the developed world, you see they actually designate some streets and they close them on some days, because that's where the people can access the goods. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think in this recommendation that they are going to be designated areas. Let it be spelled clearly how the designated area will be chosen. Otherwise, I see a situation where the same hawkers are going to be condemned into some corners of the towns in this republic, and then it will end up just in more and more chaos. The other one, Mr. Speaker, if people are anywhere, and those people are doing a business, and they are paying tax, they are having a license, Mr. Speaker, I expect that they should be provided the necessary profession, water, sanitation, and maybe a well-designed place where they could be, even having some small kind of restaurant to eat. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, and these are the things we see in the rest of the world. These are the things we should be bringing here. Therefore, if we are serious that we want to protect the hawkers, if we are serious, we want to organize the hawkers in this country, we must come out and do a serious thing. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the county governments trying to organize these hawkers, Mr. Speaker, I feel that in the act, I would beseech that there is a law for this House to actually try to see that the recommendations we give are implemented. Because if we say it will be amount to nothing else than just the way we pass budgets here, and then we all know what happens, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support this law fully. I support this bill fully. And I want to say there should be a law protecting the hawkers to the point, Mr. Speaker, where the so-called county council askaris should actually be being subjected to the law when they harass these people. It's not enough just to say that we recognize hawkers and then we don't put a law reprimanding the people who are harassing them. And I think the same law should put a compensation to the hawkers. When somebody comes and destroys their wares, there should be a compensation, and they should be able to lodge a compensation with the county government, which should be paid, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the country we have youth. We have youth who are actually jobless. Today, they are up to about 60% of the population, and most of them are jobless. You go to every town of this country, and you will find our young people, the young ladies and the young men standing in every bus stop, doing nothing. Mr. Speaker, I think this act should expound and try to see that in every town of this country, there should be a system where there are areas and designated where young people and young men with proper funding also from the county governments. The money we are putting to them, they should put some money aside, which is actually pottery. Let them stop saying they are building roads and they are just dumping some soils in every corner of the county, and we know where the money is. Let them stop doing that and address this kind of an issue of our young people who are jobless. Let them stop doing the things that they are doing for obvious reasons, and they ensure there are drugs in the hospitals. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to say is, can we be having our government, our county governments, including the national government, seriously looking into how they can even uplift this big labor force, which is ending up being called so much hawking, and they ensure that they end up contributing properly in the economy of this country. Mr. Speaker, I would wish to say I support the bill fully, and I hope that it will bring a change to lives of many hardworking, deserving Kenyans who have been in harassment through and through. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Senator Lokorio Petronila Were.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to thank Senator Kibiru for coming up with this bill on the street vendors, on how to manage and deal with street vendors. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by disagreeing with Senator Malala, who said yesterday that this law should not be here, that it should go to the counties. But Mr. Speaker, the issue of hawkers is an issue that cuts across all towns and all cities in this country. And therefore, we need a law that is uniform to guide counties on how to deal with, I don't want to call it a menace, but on how to deal with hawkers and their business. Mr. Speaker, the harassment of hawkers and generally the informal sector has been of concern, not just to cities, but to all towns. It's as if the inspectorates of county government's job is to prevent hawkers from selling their wares. And mainly it's because they are not guided. With this law in place, they will be fully guided through the county executive committee, a member that is in charge of this docket. This bill, Mr. Speaker, there's too much noise. Mr. Speaker, I would like to be protected from the noise, and I would like to be heard.
Okay, let's consult in low tones, honorable senators. Senator Nderitu, what is your point of intervention?
Mr. Speaker, the member, Senator Were, she's talking about noise, Mr. Speaker, and I can't hear any noise. It's just members consulting, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the consultations are too loud. So the loud consultation is what I would like to be limited. Thank you. So yes, Mr. Speaker, let me proceed. And as I was saying earlier, that there has mainly been no framework to guide counties or even national governments on how to deal with the issue of hawkers or street vendors. Mr. Speaker, this law provides for licensing of hawkers in a manner that should be improved on. Instead of them having to be categorized, they should be given numbers, as somebody suggested yesterday, so that their numbers are both at the back of the uniforms they will wear, and those uniforms can be colored depending on in what area of business or trade the hawker or the street vendor is involved in. Licensing will also create some formality in the sector and make this sector recognizable. We want hawkers, Mr. Speaker, once they are registered, to be able to approach banks, for a loan, so that they can improve their operations. And Mr. Speaker, it should also be known that the informal sector contributes largely to the economy of this country, and it has been doing so without any form of regulation. With this law, Mr. Speaker, we expect that government will be able to reap even more in terms of revenue from this sector. Mr. Speaker, in this bill, Section 8 talks about vending zones and restricting and providing both restrictive and non-restrictive zones for these hawkers. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind the sponsor of this bill, Senator Kibiru, that hawkers usually follow where customers are. So they will be found at bus stops, they will be found at crossroads or stages as we like to call them. And therefore, there should be consideration of where these zones are placed in relation to where the flow of customers is. We have seen many market centers put up by CDF, by national government affirmative funds, yet hawkers don't go to those beautiful markets that have been built because customers are not found there. Customers are found in places of convenience, and that is where hawkers go. So unless we look at this issue with that in mind, we'll continue to have hawking as a menace instead of a benefit to our economy. The bill also, Mr. Speaker, in Section 9, calls for public participation. Of course, we know we are still working on the public participation bill, and the executive is working on the public participation policy to guide public participation. But, Mr. Speaker, it is an important tenet of our Constitution to have the public involved in whatever decisions we make. The harassment we keep seeing between hawkers and the inspectorates of counties is mainly because the hawkers as key stakeholders are not involved or are not participating in decisions that are affecting them. This bill provides that the CEC will conduct business with hawkers in consultation with these hawkers and will develop a framework for public participation to ensure that every decision about them is involving them. And that the disconnect that has been existing will be a thing of the past. And with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support the bill with amendments.
Senator Wario Golija Juma.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia nafasi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono mswada huu wa wafanyabiashara wadogo, wafanyabiashara ambao wanafanya biashara zao katika sehemu ya mabarabarani, sehemu ya vitongoji ya kungojea mabasi na matatu, na wamedhulumiwa kwa muda mrefu sana. Mheshimiwa Spika, County Council ya zamani iliweka askari ya kuwafukuza hapa na pale, na pia serikali ya county kwa wakati huu pia imeweka askari pia, na watu hawa wanapata dhuluma mingi sana wakifukuzwa huku na kule, na pia bidhaa zao kupotea na pia kuporwa kwa bidhaa zao. Ni wakati mwafaka kabisa kuwa na sheria ambayo itasimamia wafanyabiashara hawa ambao wanachuuza mali zao ndogo ndogo. Mheshimiwa Spika, unavyojua kaunti zinaendelea kujengwa, na katika hali ya ujenzi wa kaunti ni vizuri viwanja vipatikane ili hawa pia wakue na soko maalum katika sehemu za kaunti ili biashara hii ya kuchuuza iweze kuendelea. Mheshimiwa Spika, ninaomba unilinde na wale ambao wanaongea.
Basi muongee kwa sauti ya chini
siwezi kusikika
ili senator aweze kusikika. Basi umelindwa vilivyo.
Mzee wetu ambaye tunamheshimu sana, senior council, yuko barabarani.
Hoja nidhamu ni gani, Senator Nderitu?
Mimi Bwana Spika, ningependa kuarifiwa na senator anayeongea ni wapi anamaanisha barabara, kwa sababu hapa tuko katika seneti na sijui anamaanisha barabara gani, kwa sababu sioni barabara yote hapa. Na mzee ni UP.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, vile mnavyojua senior council ambaye tunamheshimu baba yetu mzee Orengo ni mtu anaheshimika sana, na sisi wengi tumefuata nyayo zake ndio tumekuja hapa. Si kusema kwa roho mbaya, nimesema kwa vile alikuwa anaongelesha watu na vile tunaongea biashara ya watu wa barabarani, pia naye pia alikuwa katika sehemu ya kupitia na sikuwa ubaya, na yeye pia ashatupisha na ametupatia fursa hiyo. Nafikiri naweza kuendelea. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikiendelea Mheshimiwa Spika, kaunti zinaendelea kujengwa. Ni kweli hawa watu wanafuata biashara katika sehemu za mabasi, lakini vile kaunti inaendelea kujengwa na pesa za ugatuzi zinafika katika sehemu za kaunti, ni wakati hasa kuweka soko maalum na pia kuweka siku ya biashara ya barabarani, ili watu wajue leo ni siku ya barabarani, tuweze kuweka hivyo na ijulikane katika sehemu tofauti tofauti, ili tuweze kuinua wale ambao wanachuza mali zao katika barabara. Mheshimiwa Spika, matajiri wengi walipitia biashara hiyo ya barabarani na mpaka wamekuwa matajiri leo. Watu wanaanza na biashara ndogo ndogo ya kuchuza mali zao katika sehemu za kusimamisha mabasi na pia matatu. Hivyo ndio vile dunia inaanza na ndio vile utajiri unaanza. Na wengi wale ambao wako na wholesale siku hizi wanayofanya katika viwanda kubwa kubwa wamepitia katika biashara ndogo ndogo zile za barabarani na ndio walipata mali zao. Na kwa sababu hiyo ni wakati hasa ya kuweza kuwapatia heshima kubwa wale ambao wanauza biashara mali zao barabarani, na pia makali ya maaskari ambayo wanawafukuza hapa na pale pia yaweze kuvunjwa, ili watu hawa waweze kupata pesa. Kwa sababu vile tunavyojua hawa ni watu ambao wanafundisha watoto shule, wako na watoto sekondari, wako na watoto vyuo vikuu na pia shule za msingi, na pia ni biashara hiyo ndio inawawezesha kuweza kupeleka karo yao. Na kama hiyo biashara itapatiwa itaweza kuandikishwa na iweze kupata sheria mwafaka ambayo inaweza kulinda biashara hiyo, basi tutakuwa tunajenga watu maskini, wale watu ambao wako barabarani kuweza kuchuza, na ndio hivyo ndio tunaweza kujenga Kenya ya leo, ili watu wapate mapato. Kwa hivyo, Mheshimiwa Spika, ninaunga mkono. Asante kwa kunipatia nafasi.
Senator wako Naomi Jilo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important bill by Senator Kabiro on the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood Bill. I stand, and from the beginning, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I support this bill because it touches on the lives of many Kenyans who struggle to feed their families, who struggle to feed, to meet the demands, their demands on daily basis. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill because the principal object of this bill is to provide a framework to regulate the business of street vending in the country. Small-scale trade contributes significantly to the growth of trade in the country, which is very true, Mr. Speaker, and majority of Kenyans are the people who are in this business in different counties and different areas in our counties. But what we have seen in the past is that most of the time, the small, the vendors the vendors are harassed and most of the time frustrated. Most of the time, again, they even lose their, properties and everything because they go under a lot of stress and harassment. Mr. Speaker, once this comes, the bill is put into practice, then this will protect the vendors, and they will be able to enjoy even the small businesses they do. As many senators have already said, Mr. Speaker, many Kenyans are involved in this. And even the great people, the rich people, have been doing this before. Famous people whom we know have been, selling their commodities on the street, and that is where they have been able to accumulate their money and their wealth. And it is good for us to create conducive environment for every Kenyan who would want to do their own businesses and create their wealth. Mr. Speaker, many at the times, people, small farmers, small traders suffer because as a government, we don't give them attention. As a government, we keep on harassing them, creating opportunity for those who already have what they need. So I support this bill because it will help the small traders, the vendors. They'll be protected. They'll have everything done for them so that they will be able to do their businesses. Mr. Speaker, when you go through the bill, part 2 of the bill talks on regulations of street vendors. The regulations that will guide under the guidance of the Cabinet Secretary by notice in the Gazette, and that the regulations which will guide the vendors and will help them to do their business and even register. So I support this bill, as I said, because once this happens, the Cabinet Secretary will be able to establish such other offices of the unit anywhere in Kenya as may be necessary for discharge of the provision of this act. Mr. Speaker, I think even within the city of Nairobi and other big cities, the challenges they face cannot be compared with the challenges that small vendors face in other small towns. Because even before they sell their commodities, sometimes they are harassed, and even before they make any profit, they go under loss because they keep on borrowing money so that they can pay for their business to start off. Mr. Speaker, part 3 speaks about vending zones, which is very important, and part 8, each county executive committee member shall by notice in the county gazette demarcate and designate the county into vending zone as follows, which has been already said, and then the traders can be able to identify the areas that are relevant to them and do their businesses. Mr. Speaker, again, part 5 of that, number 9, is what has really excited me. Because it is saying, in considering the vending zone plan under subsection 4, the county assembly shall conduct public participation. Mr. Speaker, this is something that will enhance the views that are already in the bill and shall give the opportunity to the vendors so that they can also come and view and give their views for them to have what is relevant to them, and also do business that is acceptable. And number 6 of that, upon approval of the plan, the county executive committee member shall publish the details of the county vending zone, and then under B again, submit a copy of the plan to the cabinet secretary, which clearly shows that everything will move systematically until until the entire process is over. Again, number 10, part 1, each county government shall progressively provide for the construction and maintenance of the vending centers to enable the carrying out of street vending activities in a fair, transparent, and safe manner. Mr. Speaker, this is very good, and especially for the vendors, because if the county government will be responsible for this, they'll be able to maintain, they'll be able to manage, they'll be able to run the entire place as long as those who are doing the business then can be able to sustain the running of that. Mr. Speaker, on that, what I want to say is a lot has been said on the management of finances and everything in the counties, unless, again, proper measures are put in place so that the finances collected and the way the management can be done is done in a manner that can be transparent. Again, it might be another space where Kenyans can lose a lot of money. So my suggestion is that proper accountability be put in place, and that everyone will be responsible, and responsible people to be put in place so that Kenyans will not face a lot of challenges. Mr. Speaker, under number 12, again, part 3, part 12, number 3 says, no licensed street vendor shall be evicted or relocated from the location specified in their license unless the street vendors has been given 30 days notice of such eviction in such a manner as shall be prescribed by the relevant county government. Mr. Speaker, this will help the small, the vendors, because in the past, they have been tossed around every corner and frustrated, but once this is applied, then they'll be given proper notice, and the small vendors, then the vendors then will enjoy their business because they know that they are protected by the law that will be put in place as a result of this bill. So this is a very good part, and especially this number 3, because no one will be chased, nobody will close down their businesses as a result of somebody trying to evict them, Mr. Speaker. Again, I want to say that part 4 is also very encouraging and also very good, and something that will help the vendors. Registration and licensing of street vendors, the process that they need to go through, what they need to do, and how they can be registered, and everything is put under that. The only thing I want to say on that is under number 3, the director shall be the registrar for the purpose of maintenance of national registry of street vendors. The director is the person responsible in every county. That is what it means. And that means then we will have proper records of all the vendors in the entire nation if we want, and that then can protect the small vendors. We will know their numbers. We will know what they need. The government can even come up in with a proposal of enhancing what they are doing, and also supporting them so that they can grow their businesses. Mr. Speaker, Part 16 of Part 16, number 1, says a person shall not engage street vending activities unless they are registered as a street vendor and in possession of valid vending license from the relevant county. This, again, is a very important area that will protect only the registered vendors to engage in business, because as we know, Kenyans are very opportunistic people. They come and people can start their businesses and do their businesses anywhere, but as long as you are not registered, then the government can take actions on you, but then this will give the registered members opportunity to do their businesses and create their own wealth, because they will be able to do their businesses in the areas that are good and maybe have good income for them. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill again because of under number 18, which talks about upon expiry, a vending license may be renewed for such further period not exceeding 1 year. Number 2 says a registered street vendor issued with a vending license may apply for renewal of license in the prescribed manner at least 30 days before the date of expiry. Mr. Speaker, what we know is that many traders in the past have suffered because even when it comes to renewal of their license, they face a lot of challenges. In our world or in our Kenya today, where corruption is practiced everywhere, many small traders have faced a lot of challenges because they keep on coughing money from one office to the other, giving to different officers so that their license can be renewed. But with this bill, then within 30 days, they would be able to register their license, and as long as they do it on time, there'll be no gap, and their businesses will run smoothly. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I fully support this bill, and also under part 5, under the rights and obligations of the street vendors. As I was going through the bill quickly, I looked at that, and that area is the area that will protect and also brings out the rights and obligation of the street vendors. In the past, they have been denied their right and mistreated in different ways, but now that this bill will be, when this bill will be put in place, then they'll be protected against any harassment. They'll be protected because many people have in the past misused them and also exploited them, but now they'll be able to be protected by the law that will be put in place. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and it is my prayer that one day it will be put into practice, and that our small traders will enjoy their businesses and create their wealth, and that through that we will be able to reduce the poverty level in our country, and especially in the rural areas. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.
Senator Sakaja.
Asante sana Bwana Spika, na pia Senator Mutula kwa kupiga makofi vile nimekuja kuzungumza. Bwana Spika, njia yetu ya kupiga makofi katika bunge hakuna njia nyingine unaweza kuisema, ni hivyo. Bwana Spika, ningependa kushukuru kwa kunipa nafasi huu kuunga mkono mswada huu ambao umeletwa na Senator wa Kirinyaga, ambao ni mswada muhimu sana. Nimefurahi kwamba ni mojawapo ya mswada ambao magavana wetu wamefikiria na wakaweza kupitia wenzetu kuleta mswada huu, na huo ni Gavana Mwangi wa Iria. Ingawa kuna vipenge kadhaa ambavyo lazima tutaangalia na kukagua na labda kubadilisha, kuleta mabadilisho kwa hayo vipenge, lakini kwa jumla, Bwana Spika, mswada huu ni mswada mzuri sana. Ni kweli ya kwamba wachuuzi wetu wa biashara rejareja ni wengi katika miji mikuu, ama miji mbalimbali kama Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, najua wako wengi, Nakuru na kwingineko. Lakini Bwana Spika, hawa wachuuzi ni kama wamedharauliwa kwa muda mrefu. Na ni kama serikali, sana serikali za county na pia serikali kuu hapo awali, kabla tuwe na mfumo wa ugatuzi, ilikuwa badala ya kusaidia wafanyikazi ama wafanyibiashara kustawisha biashara zao, imekuwa inawadhulumu, imekuwa inawafinyilia chini, Bwana Spika. Na hiyo ni jambo ambalo halifai. Bwana Spika, katika mji wa Nairobi, ukitembea kila mahali katika mji wa Nairobi, utapata vijana wetu, utapata kina mama wanajaribu tu kutafuta riziki yao, wanajaribu tu kutafuta njia ya kupeleka chakula nyumbani, lakini kila siku ni kufukuzwa, kila siku ni kufungwa, na ni jambo la kusikitisha, Bwana Spika. Ni kama kumekuwa na vita dhidi ya watu wadogo ama wananchi wa kawaida. Bwana Spika, kijana Nairobi ama msichana mdogo ama mama akiamua ajaribu kufungua biashara, anaambiwa hapa panafaa kuwa na barabara, biashara yake inabomolewa. Kijana akijaribu kufanya biashara ya bodaboda, anaambiwa ukiingia katika jiji kuu au Central Business District, bodaboda yako inachukuliwa. Bwana Spika, ukitembea hapa tu hatua chache, uende katika police station ya Central Police Station, utaona idadi kubwa sana ya bidhaa za wachuuzi, idadi kubwa sana ya mabodaboda ambazo zimechukuliwa, zimepigwa marufuku. Alafu tunauliza ni kwa nini hali ya usalama umeenda chini, Bwana Spika. Tunauliza kwa nini watu wanaibiwa, kwa nini kuna Nairobi tunasema kuna watu wanapigwa ngeta, na nafikiri hiyo tunaweza ongeza kwa Kiswahili pia kwa sasa, lakini bado ni serikali hiyo ambayo inafanya hao wakose ajira, Bwana Spika. Wale ambao wanafanya kazi kwa matatu wanasumbuliwa kila siku na polisi, wanasumbuliwa kila siku na watu wa City Council ama askari wa jimbo. Bwana Spika, Bwana Spika, lazima tuseme kama Senate ya kwamba hatutakubali Wakenya wa kawaida waendelee kudhulumiwa. Bwana Spika, ukiangalia hata ile hela ambayo hawa wachuuzi wa kawaida, hawa wachuuzi wadogo wanatoa katika county, wamama wangu wale ambao wako Gikomba na wale wako Marikiti, Bwana Spika, kila siku wanalipa shilingi 50. Shilingi 50, na nimefurahi sana jana Senator wa Kakamega aliweza pia kupewa orodha kama hiyo Kakamega. Shilingi 50 Bwana Spika kila siku kwa siku 6. Kwa wiki 4 kwa mwezi. Kwa miezi 12 ni shilingi 14,400 kwa mfanyikazi wa kawaida, mfanyibiashara wa kawaida. Lakini yule ambaye ako na duka analipa 5,000 kwa mwaka mmoja. Kweli hiyo ni haki? Hiyo ni utu? Alafu huyo ambaye analipa 14,000 bado anadhulumiwa, anafukuzwa, anapigwa. Juzi tuliona kuna mama ambaye ni mlemavu amewekwa juu ya gari ya City Council kwa sababu ati wanamshika kwa nguvu kwa sababu ya kuuza. Bwana Spika, lazima nakubali kuarifiwa na
Yes, what is your point of information, Senator?
Na Senator wa Bungoma.
Senator wa Nairobi ya kwamba katika bunge la Nairobi chama anachowakilisha hapa Seneti kina uwingi wa MCAs kupindukia, ile kwa Kiingereza tunaweza kusema super majority, na wao ndio wanapitisha miswada ya kulipisha wafanyabiashara, wachuruzi na warejareja hizo pesa chungu nzima ambazo unazungumzia. Kwa hivyo na kuarifu ya kwamba anzia kwa kusungumuza na wao ma MCAs wako wa chama chako, waende waondoe ushuru, wachuruzi wapewe leseni ya mwaka mmoja wakilipa kama shilingi 600 au 800 ikiwa inastahili mwaka mzima, ndio tutakuwa tunawasaidia.
Asante sana Senator Wetangula. Hiyo ni taarifa ambayo nilikuwa nayo hapo awali. Lakini vile ningependa kumweleza Bwana Spika, shida ya wachuuzi wetu Nairobi haswa sio tu kiwango ama ni pesa ngapi wanaambiwa walipe, lakini wanalipa hizo hela na hawapati huduma. Shida yao kubwa ni kwamba ukienda kwa mfano Marikiti ama Gikomba ama popote pale, hawana shida na kulipa, bora pasafishwe, wapate usalama na wasidhulumiwe na serikali. Na zaidi ya hiyo Bwana Spika, sio vizuri ya kwamba kama mtu analipa hizo hela hazitumiwi kwa njia ambayo inapaswa kutumiwa kwao. So hiyo ndo shida ya kwanza. Shida ya pili ndio labda itakuwa ni vizuri wakipunguza, na ndio maana naunga mkono mswada huu, kwa sababu baada ya huu mswada kupitishwa hapa katika bunge la Senate, tunataka mswada kama huu upitishwe katika jimbo la Nairobi, katika County Assembly, bunge la Nairobi, na mimi mwenyewe nitawapatia hao MCAs wetu, hao wakilishi ward, waweze kupitisha mswada kama huu. Lakini zaidi ya hayo Bwana Spika, hata juzi nilisema sio sheria tu ambayo inatufunga mikono tusiweze kuhudumia watu vizuri. Saa zingine ni ile ni ukosefu wa utu Bwana Spika. Ni ukosefu wa ile kwa kimombo tunasema common sense. Sijui Senator wa Laikipia utasema aje hivyo kwa Kiswahili. Common sense Bwana Spika in quotes. No, akili? Wacha wajadiliane hawa wahenga. Senator wa Mombasa na Senator Zani. Kwa sababu hakuna sheria ambayo itakufunza kufikiria mtu wa kawaida. Hakuna sheria ambayo itafanya ubadilishe roho yako. Hakuna sheria ambayo itakufanya kitu ambao unaona wazi. Bwana Spika, juzi niko na wachuzi wangu wa Westlands ambao walikuwa hapo awali katika market ya Westlands, katika soko la Westlands. Wakatolewa, wakaambiwa sasa tunajenga mkae hapa karibu na barabara. Wakatolewa wakawekwa kwa barabara. Bwana Spika, jengo hilo limechukua zaidi ya miaka 10. Na ni vizuri juzi tumesukuma na wanaendelea. Lakini wakakuja baadaye kufurushwa na serikali hiyo kuambiwa sasa tunataka kutengeneza barabara. Barabara hadi wa leo haujaanza na wako nje. Singekuwa basi mmalize kujenga soko, muhamishe hapo, alafu ndo mjenge barabara. Haizi kuwa ati hawa watu wa kawaida watu wafikiri. mama akinyang'anywa bidhaa zake anaambiwa alipe 20,000. 20,000 ndio apate bidhaa zake aweze kuendelea. So ni ukosefu wa utu, hata si ukosefu wa sheria. Ni ukosefu wa utu. Na watu tunasema washindwe. Washindwe. Shida ambayo tunayo, ama kwa vile tunasema nyumbani, riswa. Shida ambayo tuko nao ni ukosefu wa mpangilio thabiti. Kwa sababu kuna wale wachuuzi rejareja na pia kuna wale ambao wanaduka. Ukiangalia hawa ambao tunaita hawkers ama wachuuzi wa bidhaa rejareja, Bwana Spika, sana sana watakuwa karibu na zile stesheni za matatu ama pali pa uchukuzi ndio watakuwa. Kwa sababu jioni kutoka kazini, na najua zamani ulikuwa unafanya hivyo kabla ukue mdosi, na sisi tulikuwa tunafanya hivyo zamani pia. Bwana Spika, ulikuwa unatoka kwa ofisi yako ukitembea kwenda kupanda matatu, utaona nyanya 2 hapa, vitunguu ununue, ama utaona skirt ununulie bibi yako, ama zile viatu pumps ununue, na lazima wawe hapo karibu na wachukuzi. Kuna nafasi ambayo inatosha, Bwana Spika, katika jiji la Nairobi, na najua majimbo mengine, kuweza kusema hapa kutakuwa na wachuuzi rejareja, na hapa kutakuwa na duka, kwa sababu haifai kuwa tusaidie hawa alafu tuwe tunadhulumu hao wengine ambao pia wanalipa ushuru kwa serikali. Na ni ukosefu tu wa mpangilio, na ni rahisi kufanya. Imefanywa katika mataifa mengi ambayo tumetembea, mataifa ambayo yako katika kiwango kimoja na Jamhuri la Kenya. So Bwana Spika, tunasema ya kwamba tuwe na mpangilio, tuwe na orodha ya hawa. Orodha ya hawa wapewe nambari. Tujue ya kwamba hawa wachukuzi ni wa Moi Avenue na watakuwa wanakuja siku hii. Barabara hii labda itakuwa inafungwa siku hii ili waweze kuja kuuza hapo. Bwana Spika, iwe tunawasaidia kukuza biashara zao, iwe tunawasaidia. Jana Bwana Spika, nilikuwa pande ya Wayakiwe, nikaenda kula kwa kibanda hapo karibu na watu wanajua Njugunas, pale Njugunas ilikuwa hapo Max kando ya barabara, na nikiangalia walikuwa wananiambia kwamba wanadhulumiwa kila siku, wanafukuzwa. Pali wako ni uwanja ambao uko bure, hautumiki kwa kazi yoyote, hakuna nyumba itajengwa hapo, hakuna barabara itapita hapo. Kuna wafanyabiashara 5 ama 6 hivi ambao wameajiri zaidi ya akina mama na vijana 90. Lakini hivi karibuni utasikia wamefukuzwa kwa sababu ni wachuuzi wa bidhaa rejareja, wamefukuzwa. Hapo pakae tu wazi, hakuna faida kwa uchumi. Hao vijana na akina mama wataenda wapi, Bwana Spika? Kama kungekuwa na serikali ya jimbo ambayo inafikiria watu wake, ama serikali ya kitaifa, ungechukua hawa watu useme sasa palimko, lazima tuwajengee hapa kibanda vizuri, tupige rangi, tuwasaidie na pale ya kuweka bidhaa zenu. Kwa sababu nini ndio muhimu? Kuona tu nafasi ziko wazi ama watu wenu kuweza kupata ajira. Hii mambo ya kupamba maneno tutafanya sasa ile vijana wetu wako na ajira baadaye. Bwana Spika, kuna wachuuzi ambao walikuwa Outer Ring Road. Na lazima nizungumze juu yao, wale wa Outer Ring Road na wale wa Mtindo. Bwana Spika, Bwana Spika, walifukuzwa kwa sababu wako kwa ukuta karibu na shule. Wale wa Kibra hapo kwa DC walifukuzwa, vitu zao zilibomolewa, walifurushwa, hawakupatiwa fidia, hawakupatiwa pali pengine pa kwenda kufanya biashara yao. Wamebaki hapo nje ati kwa sababu walikuwa wanafanya kuwe na ukosefu wa usalama katika shule. Lakini sasa hizi vile wamekosa ajira, si ndio ukosefu wa usalama utakuwa zaidi? So lazima tubadilishe vile tunafikiria juu hawa watu wa kawaida. Na nimefurahi kwamba tumeweza kujenga pamoja na banki ya kitaifa World Bank. Unajua sio kila kitu unaweza kubadilisha kwa Kiswahili. World Bank, ya kwamba tumeweza kujenga market, tumeweza kujenga hapo soko Kangundo Road, ambapo tunataka waweze kuingia wote.
Hoja yako ni gani, Senator wa Mombasa?
Hii ni hoja ya lugha. World Bank kwa Kiswahili ni banki ya dunia. Ni banki ya dunia, sio banki kuu ya dunia. Kwa hivyo hakuna banki ya kimataifa ambayo inajulikana kama World Bank. Thank you.
Asante sana. Unajua Nairobi ni vile tu bunge hatujakubali Sheng. Tungeweza kubali Sheng, ningepeleka watu wa Nairobi na rada ama na Rieng. Lakini sasa kwa sababu Sheng haikubaliki, lazima nijaribu kuzungumza kama mheshimiwa Faki. Lakini ni kweli banki la dunia na tumeweza kujenga pamoja na serikali kuu soko kubwa hapo Kangundo Road. Na tayari tumeanza kuona ufisadi ukiingia, kwa sababu wale ambao walikuwa wametolewa Outer Ring Road, wale ambao walikuwa wametolewa Mtindwa, wale ambao walikuwa wametolewa mali pengine, na kulikuwa na orodha ya wale ambao wanafaa kuwekwa katika soko hiyo, ni kama hizo orodha zimebadilishwa. Na ningependa kueleza watu wa Nairobi, hatutakubali wale ambao wanajijua wameuza hapo hizo stalls, wameuzia marafiki zao sijui kwa 300,000, wataona. Hatutakubali iende namna hiyo, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu lazima tuwe watu wa utu na lazima tuwafikirie watu wetu ambao wako hapo chini. Bwana Spika, kuna vipengee kadhaa katika mswada huu ambao lazima tutabadilisha. Sioni sababu ya serikali ya kitaifa ama serikali kuu, na naomba Bwana Mheshimiwa Faki anisikize kwa sababu yeye ndo anakosoa Kiswahili. Serikali kuu iwe ndo inachukua orodha ya wachuuzi. Mbona mnataka orodha ya wachuuzi? Kwani kuna orodha ya wafanyabiashara wa aina mbalimbali ama aina zingine, aina tofauti? Hakuna. So hakuna haja hiyo orodha iwe katika serikali kuu, lakini serikali ya county itakuwa ni vizuri waweze kujua, ili kwa minajili ya kupanga na kuweza kuwa na usalama, waweze kujua. Ya pili, Bwana Spika, kazi hii nyingi, in fact kusudi kwetu kuu ya kuleta sheria kama hii ni kuwapa wale ambao wako katika assemblies, county assemblies au bunge za majimbo waweze kuiga mswada kama huu. So tusitoe hii kazi ya kuangalia mambo ya uchuuzi kutoka serikali za jimbo kuzileta katika serikali kuu, kwa sababu mkiweka birokrasi mingi na mpangilio mkubwa sana wa kuweza kuwasajili, hamtakuwa mnawasaidia. Yule mama ambaye ako Kamulu ama yule mama ambaye ako Kawangware, mnataka aanze kuja hapa Nairobi katika city center kutafuta sijui director wa idara gani, sijui director yupi, kusajiliwa, kuandikwa? Hapana, mnawasumbua. Wacha wafanye kazi hapo. Serikali ya county ndio iende kwao pali wako, iende Kawangware, iende Kangemi, iwapange, iwajengee hizo vibanda vyao vizuri na iweze kuwakubali kufanya kazi. Bwana Spika, Bwana Spika, kumekuwa na kesi mbalimbali na nimefurahi, nimesikia Senator wa Nyeri vile alizungumza, akasema kwamba wale ambao wanawadhulumu hawa wachuuzi lazima wachukuliwe hatua kali. Kuna wakati nilikuwa na shida Isili, kwa sababu kulikuwa na vita kati ya Isili business community na wale wachuuzi, na tukapata kwamba kuna vikundi vya vijana ambao walikuwa wamelipwa pamoja na askari wa county, na walikuwa na silaha. Bwana Spika, ukiona silaha ambao walikuwa wanazitumia kama nyundo, kama msumeno, kupiga wamama, hai kweli Bwana Spika, ilikuwa jambo la kuleta machozi kwa macho zetu, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu ni kama tumedharau watu, tena tunaona ni kama ni wahalifu, tumeona ni watu wachafu, tumesema tuwafiche, ati ndio mji ung'are. Mji utang'araje kama watu wako hawana ajira na hawana chakula? Hakuna haja ya kung'arisha mji, Bwana Spika. Hata kwa Biblia Yesu alisema ni kama kuosha nje ya nyumba na ndani kumeoza, ama kuosha kikombe nje na ndani ni chafu. Tusiwe watu ambao kufanya maneno kama hayo. Bwana Spika, ni vizuri kuwe na hii leseni ambayo ni ya mwaka mzima, lakini hawa hawawezi kulipa. Itakuwa ni muhimu waweze kulipa kwa installment ama waweze kulipa polepole. Hawezi ambia mtu mchuzi wa kawaida wa Nairobi alipe 10,000 leo ama hata 5,000. 5,000 ni ile in quote stock ambayo anahitaji. Mama labda anahitaji kununua ndizi ndio aende kuuza. Ndio maana umeona siku hizi asubuhi wanakopa pesa kutoka hizi kutumia simu zao. Tala Kiswahili, kampuni kama Tala ama Fuliza. Alafu jioni wanalipa. Na ile idadi ya watu ambao wanalipa na hata hawaendi na deni ni kubwa sana. Bwana Spika, ningeomba kamati ya bajeti, na naona Senator Mutula hapa, ndio tunakubali mambo ya Tala na Fuliza, lakini lazima ujue pia hao kuna vile wanafinya hao wananchi, kwa sababu na hii itakuwa ngumu kusema kwa Kiswahili yote, lakini sikiza. Kama unadai interest ya 20% kwa mwezi, inamaanisha ya kwamba kwa mwaka umechukua interest riba ya 240% kwa mtu, kwa sababu kwa English tunasema convertible annually. So mwananchi wa kawaida analipa riba ya asilimia 240 kwa deni, na deni hizo zinapewanwa na kampuni ambazo hazijaangaliwa na Banki Kuu. Banki Kuu wanasema hawana sheria, so wanapenda tu barua, wanasema hii ni barua inaitwa no objection. Lakini mtu kama wewe Bwana Spika ama mimi nikienda kutafuta mkopo kwa banki nalipa riba ya asilimia 10. Hiyo sio haki. So hiyo pia lazima tuangalie ili mwananchi wa kawaida aweze kupata mkopo ambao anaweza kulipa vizuri na kulipa kwa riba ambayo iko chini. Bwana Spika, so tunaomba ya kwamba Senator Kibiru kama anasikia makamati wabadilishe hii mambo ya hiyo annual license iwe inalipwa kwa mwezi ama hata kwa wiki. Lakini uhakikisha pia tumeka kipengele hapa ya kwamba hela hizo ziende katika fund ambayo hiyo fund itakuwa kazi yake ni kuhakikisha ya kwamba hizi soko na pahali hao wachuuzi wanafanya kazi zinasafishwa, zinaangaliwa, kuna usalama na hawa watu wanachungwa vizuri. Bwana Madam Speaker, Bi Speaker. Nikiendelea kumaliza kwa sababu nafikiri nimezungumza kwa wingi na nimeng'ang'ana sana na hii Kiswahili. Bwana Bi Speaker, ni muhimu tukumbuke ya kwamba tuna sheria nyingi sana ambazo tumepitisha katika Senate ambazo zimeenda na zimelala katika bunge la kitaifa. Na ni jambo la kusikitisha sana. Bi Speaker, tukio ambalo lilitokea kule Feri Likoni. Kuna mswada ambao tulileta hapa mimi, Senator wa Nairobi na Senator wa Makueni Mutula Kilonzo ya kuangalia mambo ya dharura, disaster management, ambayo ilikuwa imesema ni njia gani idara mbalimbali Bi Speaker zitaweza kufanya kazi wakati wa dharura. Wakati huu ambao tukio hili limetokea kule Pwani, tumekuwa na ferry services, tuko na navy, tuko na polisi, tuko na county government, na kwa sababu ya sintofahamu kusema nani atafanya hivi, nani atafanya hivi, nani atafanya hivi, unapata tunapoteza watu. Leo nimeona video katika mtandao wa WhatsApp ya gari ikizama katika, nafikiri ilikuwa sijui mto upi ama ocean gani, lakini kwa dakika moja watu walikuja na boat haraka haraka wakaweza kuvunja dirisha na wakanusuru wale walikuwa ndani. Jana tunaambiwa kwamba ilichukua dakika moja na sekunde 20. Hawa walifanya na sekunde 60. Katika kila feri lazima kuwe na safety boat hapo. Na lazima kuwe na watu ambao wanajua labda tukio kama hii itatokea. Bi Speaker. So jambo ambalo nasema ni kwamba sheria ambazo tunazipitisha hapa itakuwa muhimu. Sijui turudishe ile kamati ambayo ilikuwa ya utekelezaji ama tufanye vipi, kwa sababu Senator Mutula, kulikuwa na haja gani si kufanya hiyo kazi yote, kuleta sheria ambayo iko kwa drawer ya Duale huko katika bunge la kitaifa na ingesaidia Wakenya kwa tukio kama hili. Bi Speaker, tungeomba ofisi lako lifuatilie sheria ambazo bunge hapa wanapitisha. Sheria nzuri kama hii tutapitisha hapa, itaenda ikae huko tena miezi 6 ama miezi 7. Itasaidia nani? Na tunatumia hela za Wakenya, tunatumia pesa ambazo Wakenya wametoa kupitia ushuru yao, na hatuwapi kazi ambayo ama haturudishi vile wanafaa kurudishiwa na zile hela ambazo wameweza kulipa. So ningependa kuambia Wakenya ya kwamba sisi tuko hapa kuangalia sheria ambazo zitawasaidia. Ningependa kuambia watu wa Nairobi ya kwamba kweli na wachuuzi haswa tunawafikiria. Tukisema ya kwamba tunakaa na wafanyabiashara, na nimesema hapo mbeleni na nimemwambia rais, nimewaambia mawaziri, mkisema mnakutana na private sector au sekta ya binafsi, sijui mtaitaje, private sector, sio tu watu ambao wamevaa suti na tai, sio tu KEPSA, sio tu Association of Manufacturers. Private sector ni wale ambao wanafanya kazi Kamkunji, wale ambao wako Gikomba, wale ambao wako Ngong Road, wale ambao wanajenga vitanda, wale maseremala. Private sector sio tu mtu ambaye amekuja na kuna shahada. Lazima tukumbuke pia Mkenya wa kawaida ako na maono na anafaa kupata usaidizi na kupata haki yake katika taifa letu. Asante sana Bi Speaker.
Thank you, Senators. Senator Nderitu, what is your intervention?
Ni wakati Senator Sakaja alipokuwa akiongea na Senator kutoka Mombasa Pwani, Senator Faki alikuwa akimwambia majina atakayotumia, nikasikia akimwambia riba na akamwambia yale mengine. Pengine tu kwa sababu ameng'ang'ana kadri ya haja, pengine mwalimu wake Senator Faki angesema ya kwamba kama angelikuwa mwalimu angempatia asilimia ngapi kwa lugha aliongea ya Kiswahili. Asante Speaker.
Sasa, is that a point of order or point of information or point of request? I was going to ignore it so that when you give your own contribution, you do it.
I have already contributed.
Oh.
Ya kumsaidia Senator Nderitu wa kule Laikipia ambaye pia ni mwanafunzi wa lugha ya Kiswahili, na ndugu yangu Senator Sakaja, kwa sababu sisi ndio maseneta majiji, tuko watatu tu katika bunge hili la Senate. Ya wengine wote ni watu maseneta kutoka vijiji na gatuzi ndogo ndogo. Amepata asilimia 70%.
Senator Sakaja, I can see your intervention. You are disputing the 70?
Be Speaker, unajua mwalimu akikosoa mwanafunzi lazima uangalie pia ile environment, mazingira. Unajua sisi ni watu wa mtaa, tumezaliwa hapa Ngara, Nairobi, so niomba ungeniongezea hiyo asilimia 80. Lakini Be Speaker, tutaleta pia mswada sisi maseneta wa cities tukubali pia, kwa sababu unajua muda unasonga, tukubali pia Sheng. Wengine wetu tunaweza tumia. Kuna watu ambao wanasikia hiyo na inaingia ndani kabisa ukiwapeleka na rada namna hiyo. Be Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Argura Kodana. Marsabit.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this important bill. Madam Speaker, the vendors of this country form an important part of the population of this country. We have been talking about unemployment levels being very high, and this is a part of the population of this country which has gone out of its way to make sure that it's self-employed. So we have a responsibility as a government, both at the national and the county level, to provide the enabling environment for these vendors. And one such enabling environment is the enabling legislation which we are bringing about. And I'd like to say that this is a very important and timely legislation because we have these vendors everywhere. The county governments have been in place maybe for the last 6 or 7 years, but they have not come up with ways of regulating this very important sector of this, the citizen of this country. So it's upon us as the Senate to provide that legislative environment so that the counties can now domesticate it and come up with their specific legislations as indicated by the draft of this bill in the last part of this bill, that is the schedule and the part 6 of the miscellaneous provisions. It's very clear that it's envisaged that the county governments will have to domesticate this particular piece of legislation so that they can apply it to their own particular settings. But I'll say that the statement maybe by Senator Malala saying that we are not supposed to micromanage the counties is actually misplaced because we have to take care of the interest, and where they have not taken the initiative, then we'll have to provide a general legislation like this one. Madam Speaker, the case of this important group of Kenyans doesn't need to be emphasized. If you go to any setup, like I'll give you a very clear case of my county headquarters, Marsabit. As long as I know, even when I was going to primary school, there is a particular group of women in that town who have been selling firewood, selling milk, selling vegetables, and up to now they don't have anywhere to operate from. You'll find them on the pavements of shops. They'll be exposed to all elements of weather, sun. When it rains, they are there. When it's dusty, they are there. So they don't have any conducive environment to operate from. But because it's a necessity, that's what they have been doing all that time. So it's necessary for us to take care of those people by providing them with very conducive environments where they have the basic infrastructure like sanitation, waste disposal, water, security, lighting systems, so that they can also conduct their businesses in an organized manner. That way they can grow. The bill envisages that they'll be allowed to unionize themselves. They can have circles from where they can maybe borrow, they can save, and they can improve their businesses. Madam Speaker, where the land is not there, that is why we are talking of the planning. The counties have to deliberately plan for this important group of people or business people by looking around and replanning their urban areas, the towns, so that in case there was no prior vision of this kind of requirement, then they have to even acquire private lands through what we call compulsory acquisition and set up these vendors' operating area. That way, they will provide that environment. And we expect them to graduate from being those street vendors to established business people who will develop and contribute to the economy of that county. We have been insisting that counties have to generate their own revenues. We have been talking of even putting it, we even have it in the shareable formula where we have fiscal responsibility and we say counties have to generate their own resources. These are some of the areas they are targeting to generate that resource. And if they don't provide the enabling environment, then it will be counterproductive because they will not be able to raise whatever they wanted to raise, and that is why they will get penalized. So they'll have to first provide the environment, then from there now they can get their resources. Madam Speaker, one issue I have with this bill is the issue of county government being oversighted by the national government. I don't know what the drafter had in mind when he came up with this unit, to which the county government will be reporting, giving the registers of their vendors. I don't know what they'll do with that register. We already have the registrar of companies, registrar of societies. I have not heard of the registrar of companies or societies submitting their list to a particular unit within the national government. So what is the purpose of having this unit, and why do we have to, the county government have to submit the list of their vendors? They need to manage them at that level, at the county level. So that is an area which I'll like the sponsor of this bill to have it amended so that we don't, because these are issues, sometimes you'll have the county governments even going to court because of this, saying that why are we subjected to oversight by the national government? And good legislation like this will end up in our courts, and it can take forever the way our legislatures are working. Not the legislature, but the judiciary is working. A good bill like this might go and end up being held captive through our slow judiciary systems because of just this clause where you subject the county governments to oversight by the national government. So, Madam Speaker, I'll urge the sponsor of this bill to look at that. Otherwise, the bill is very well structured. It talks of how to register and license the street vendors. It also gives the county government that freedom to domesticate it. Not only that, but even it gives the county assembly, which will be the arm of the county government, which will be doing the legislation, to come up with the particular legislations which are specific to their counties. And also, it has maybe some small issues which need to be maybe corrected when it says that the CEC will enact. Within a particular time, the CEC will enact. The CEC doesn't enact. You'll have to just propose to the county assembly to enact. So we'll have to look at the way we also phrase what we expect them to do by making sure that it doesn't have any ambiguities, because it will be a question of how will the CEC enact a legislation when he is not in the county assembly. Madam Speaker, also, the bill is well structured because in Part 5 it gives the rights and obligations, because whenever you have a right to do something, you must also have obligation. The vendors also have obligation to make sure they conduct themselves in an orderly manner within the law. They have to be, they make sure that they take the rights of others into account, like not blocking the public, not obstructing other business persons also who are doing their business maybe in fixed premises. It also provides flexibility because it talks of areas which can be continuously for vending. There are part vending areas where maybe in a particular day in a week, you can have a particular street being used for particular vending of particular wares. And there are areas which are strictly no vending areas, so that there will be no this issue of the county enforcement officers chasing around the vendors. So they also have that obligation when they are given their rights that they can do their businesses in the approved areas. Then they also have obligation not to trespass into other areas. Because right now, because of lack of that legislation, you'll find always there's this, like in Nairobi, if you look around, the vendors are always vending their wares with one eye, always looking out for the enforcement officers, because they know they are not operating within the law. That will make it even very difficult for somebody to even know what kind of business he or she is doing, because you are not concentrating on your business. But if they have that proper environment and they also follow the requirements, then they will be able to do their businesses in an organized manner. And counties have been given, although the bill also gives in Part 6 what the counties need to do. It gives a breakdown of, it sets out what the counties need to legislate on, and I don't think it's very necessary for us to give them a breakdown on what areas they need to legislate on, because they'll know how, if you give them the bill, when it's enacted, then they can easily know how to domesticate it, which areas they need to take into account. So we also don't need to give them some kind of guidelines of you have to legislate for this. It will not be good because we are limiting them. Let them take this piece of legislation once it's enacted. Let them see what applies specifically to them, what they need to improve on, depending on their kind of business they do there. Because in some areas, you will have, like where I come from, we have weekly livestock markets throughout the county. You know, this week you are in this particular, or this day you are in this particular center. So they have very clear, the county government need to regulate the kind of business which goes on in their county and how to do it. Madam Speaker, I'd like to support this bill with a few amendments on, especially on the requirements of national government to oversight the county governments, so that we don't come up with a good piece of legislation which will unnecessarily be contested by the county governments trying to avoid being oversighted. And I hope the sponsor will take that into account so that we have a good piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Milko Alice Chepkorir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this time. You've given me to also support this bill. I want to say that this bill is a very important bill that is coming in to cure the blooming business of street vendors in our country that, of course, lacks control. Madam Speaker, I want to say that this is a business, or rather a form of employment to many of our youths, apart from many other people, bearing in mind the fact that our country has very many unemployed youth in this case, it will go a long way to assist in providing a way of self-employment, particularly once we have proper planning and control. It is in this case going to assist our youths, particularly. We have had many youths engaging in various activities such as drugs and substance abuse, robbery, sometimes even radicalization, because they lack what to do. And in any case, once we regulate these street vendors, we do realize that this will be one way of actually providing employment. Another very important thing that street vending, once it is regulated, Madam Speaker, is that it will go a long way in contributing trade in our country. And of course, through trade, it is here where our country will be able to collect its revenue. Madam Speaker, counties, particularly once this is checked, will go a long way in collecting a lot of revenue. I think we have been having problems in counties where they are just relying on the exchequer from the treasury, but then there are very many areas in the county where counties can be able to collect revenue through such small business such as street vending. Madam Speaker, the provision of a legal framework in this case will ensure that we have control, particularly in terms of issues of nuisance. I think if we go around, even in Nairobi, sometimes we find that without control, street vendors can come to sell their wares in front of other shops, and by so doing, in this case, blocking customers to those particularly established premises, Madam Speaker. We are saying that with a legal framework, they'll be able to be allocated areas, or rather, they'll not come and interfere with other businesses. Madam Speaker, we do realize that these street vendors normally even sell food in areas that, in this case, looks very unhealthy. And in any case, I think with regulation, we will be able to demarcate and ensure that they are selling in fairly habitable conditions. Madam Speaker, Part 3 of this bill actually speak to this kind of issue where there will be demarcations of various zones where these vendors will be allowed to sell their wares, and areas there where they are not allowed to. In other words, this will go a long way to reduce conflict. I think we have had a lot of conflicts because of the fact that there was no legal framework to ensure that the demarcation is put in place. And I think once we have demarcation, these people will sell in fairly good areas. Madam Speaker, while we are talking about these vendors being nuisance, they have also faced a lot of challenges. Earlier on, I said that sometimes they are even selling food in places where we know that that food is already contaminated. Part of other challenges that we have even realized, particularly in Nairobi County, is the fact that they have been chased around streets, and many of their wares have been taken away forever. Sometimes, one time I witnessed a case where at the course of running, one of them was knocked down, Madam Speaker, and in any case, this is actually a kind of business that without proper regulation, the same vendors are also going to be affected in terms of maybe exposing their lives to danger, or in this case, even their wares to conditions that are not favorable, and may even affect, like I was saying, food. In this case, may be sold to people that are already affected. Madam Speaker, we have also had cases where we want these street vendors to be relocated to areas where there are no customers. We know that street vending normally does very well in areas where we have customers such as bus stations, such as even streets. That is why the name has been coined. And so even as I'm speaking right now, in my county, Bomet County, we are still having a lot of conflicts, and up to today, that one has not been resolved with the street vendors that were in Bomet, that were relocated to an area where right now they hardly sell their wares. Madam Speaker, I think this, once we provide areas, or rather, once the county provides areas for sale of street vendor wares, we are advising them to actually plan and do shades for these street vendors in strategic places where, in this case, they are assured of sale. Madam Speaker, this bill also in part 2 provides for putting in place regulation in terms of the amount of fees and even registration of the number of vendors in the various counties. This is also very important in terms of actually knowing how many street vendors we have in this country. I think yesterday we had a Kamugunji where we were told that we are in the age of having open governance. Open governance in this case will be able to tell us what's going on in the various counties. And if we have street vendors where we are going to collect revenue, how many are they? And then where are they located? And in this case, how much is the revenue? And therefore, part 2 of this bill will go a long way to actually assist in this. And I want to say here that we are also asking and saying that street vendors are people that are small business owners. And normally, we do realize that they are normally charged very exorbitant fees. And I think the fees that they are charged should be controlled in such a way that they are paying an amount that will not go to affect them. Madam Speaker, under the same bill again, we also have the Cabinet Secretary playing an important role in actually providing for a department to ensure that regulation of street vendors is actually checked. However, when it comes to this, we are cautioning in the issues of control. I think there are many cases where we have the national government wanting to control many of the activities that go on in the counties. I think this is street vending normally takes place majorly in the counties, and we are saying much of the control should be delegated to the counties so that in those counties we have revenue collected assisting the counties. But then we are also asking for accountability and transparency so that the counties can use the money collected to be put into use. Madam Speaker, part 5 of this again is talking about part 4, where it is talking about licensing. I think this will go a long way to assist the vendors to know the type of license, the amount, and the time frame. And one good thing is that once we have departments in the counties, these street vendors, which are very small traders in this case, will be able to find a license right at their doorsteps in the counties, rather than coming all the way to the headquarters in Nairobi, where they'll spend a lot of money, and in this case may take time. Madam Speaker, I think here again, we will avoid issues where we have been talking about control of street vendors, so that we avoid the blame game that we have been receiving recently, where we are talking about street vendors, who is supposed to license them, what will happen in the counties, and so on and so forth. And even recently, I think we had cases where we had street vendors complaining about foreigners coming to take over their jobs. Like we had even cases with due respect to the Chinese. We were told that there are some that have taken to the streets. But then when it comes to licensing, I think this one will enable us to know who are these people who are conducting this business of street vending. Where are they located? And therefore, issues of other foreigners coming to take over such jobs in this case will be a thing of the past. Madam Speaker, as I said also, issues of accountability and transparency must be checked to avoid corruption in this case. Madam Speaker, this business, once regulated and street vendors are given favorable conditions, it will go a long way in reducing poverty in our people. You will realize, Madam Speaker, that the wares that are sold by street vendors are very tiny wares, such as even maize, foodstuffs such as vegetables, even beans, maize, and name them, and even small clothing. And in any case, these small wares will go a long way to put food on the table of these particular vendors. It will also pay their school fees. It will even provide for various needs in their homes. And I think this will alleviate the poverty in our country, because many a times we have been talking about many of our people living below the poverty line. And once street vending is regulated, I think this is one other avenue of providing finance to those people. Furthermore, large businesses, Madam Speaker, started small. Large businesses, we know of so many, that started by selling very small merchandise, and right now they are owning very large shops because from there they got little cash. So with this, Madam Speaker, I also say this is a wonderful bill. What we are saying is that caution must be ensured to ensure that we are not having control of this centralized, but then we have the county government actually playing a very major role, and maybe the county assemblies to put in place regulations so that we have this control within the counties. Otherwise, this is a very important bill, and I thank Senator Kabiru for actually bringing such a bill. With that, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Beth Wambui Mugo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity for me also to contribute, say a few words about this bill, which I fully support and which is very, very timely. And I congratulate the authors for this timely bill. Madam Speaker, this bill seeks to regulate street vending and provide for the right to informal trading, licensing, and designation and use of public space. For too long, Madam Speaker, street vendors and hawkers and others in that trade, they have been viewed like they have no rights. It's as if they are there by a mistake and they should be evicted anytime or harassed anytime or have street battles anytime. And I believe this bill is what is trying to cure, to give these people, these vendors, their rights as Kenyan citizens, protection of their goods, protection, given space, they are able to use land, public facilities for their businesses. They have a right like any other Kenyan, giving that trade dignity. We all know, Madam Speaker, that it is the informal sector is the highest employer in this country because formal employment is not adequate to go around to all the Kenyans. And if it were not for this sector, I believe there would be very big margin of people living with poverty who cannot even put food on the table for their families. And this is a sector, therefore, that both the national and county governments have to protect, have to build, have to develop, and to make sure that it gets that position of making the trade viable, of continuing to support these families, as against looking at it as they have no right to be there. Madam Speaker, it is a very big, sad situation in the city of Nairobi. I don't know how, I'm sure even in the other places it happens, but in the city, I think that's where it's worst. And if anything must be done, we must go on the city askaris. Either they need to be retrained in human rights, or I think they fake that ignorance. They don't think those vendors have rights at all. And I strongly support this bill, hoping that it will really change the attitude. And just passing this bill, I don't think it will be enough. It will be necessary to re-educate the county officials, the askaris, all those people who are involved in regulating this sector. They do not even regulate, actually. is harassing. I know a lot has been said about this bill, and I do not wish to repeat what has been said, but I would like to put a lot of emphasis on creating the necessary environment for these people, for the vendors, to be able to do their business. And I want to support this item 2, which I hear a lot of people have issue with it, a lot of senators, that part 2, which establishes a street vending outfit within the ministry to, in collaboration with county governments. It's not just the ministry unit within the ministry in the collaboration to maintain a registry of street vendors, prescribe fees for registration, and set standards to conduct. I don't imagine that is meant for national governments to control what's happening in the counties with the vendors. I think this is the issue of development. I believe Kenya is still a unitary state. And as a unitary state, we also have a devolution ministry. And the devolution ministry is supposed to work together with also the counties. And for planning purposes, for this country now, you have to plan for the whole country together, not just for this county, and that county is developing. It can develop its own way, but there are issues like macroeconomics and so forth, which really touch on every county together and the national government. And I would like to encourage or to ask my colleagues not to look at this clause. For me, I really don't look at it as made in order to control. I think it's a planning purpose, because even when we think of the international marketplace, Kenya is looked as a unit. We will not have different counties registered in those international, like the World Trade or the UN, such bodies which are nationalistic, which look at a country from the national perspective. And it is in those areas, the planning, where now devolution, when figures are done as to what numbers constitute in the informal sector, when the surveys, the international surveys are being done, I think they will focus more, they would focus more on the national government to supply such information, and that is the devolution ministry, as opposed to going to Kirinyaga, go to Homa Bay, go to Machakos to get information. Therefore, for me, I don't see any damage. I don't look at it as control. I look at it as collaboration, organization, as a unitary country on another level, not necessarily on the management on the ground. Madam Speaker, I feel strongly that we need to also establish funds to support, and I thank the national government that they have the Women Fund, the Youth Fund, that the county could also have such funds to support Mama Bogas. Because I think Mama Bogas, they are really the ones who feed this country. Especially, they feed very many households. They feed also financially their own families. They are so, so important. But it's very difficult for them to access even the money small money to start their businesses. I remember when I used to represent Dagoretti, where we have a lot of the vendors, the street vendors, the mamambogas. There would be a line of women outside my constituency office, and even youth, looking for very small money to be able to start a boga business. A boga business, I mean, to start the mamamboga business, maybe they just buy a sack of cabbage. They start with very little levels. And one of the banks offered to support us with that in that area. And the businesses for Mama Bogas grew leaps and bounds. Even as an office, we started a small fund, the constituency office, which we supported quite a few of them. And there is also the cancer survivors. There are also women from violence-backed homes where they look for support. And all those women, they require very little money to be able to start something. And then they grew it to a big business, not a big business the way we talk of big business, but for that mother, for the village, they are looked up to as really supporting their families and the community. So I would encourage that if in this bill there could be a place somehow where we could, I haven't seen that if it's already in the bill, a mechanism to support, financially support the informal sector by offering funds, small funds. The other reason I felt I needed to add a little bit more, although I was thinking this bill has been very well covered and we don't need to keep on maybe repeating the same, is regulating, making spaces available, especially in the city and maybe townships, for the vendors and having a right to that space. Not that they cannot, can be removed anytime by, for us in Nairobi, it's the askaris. And if they have to be removed, then they should be given adequate notice. That is something that I feel when we do the regulations, we give the our vetting communities human rights, because I think what lacks is for them to have rights like any other trader. Also, and I think this is because of corruption, I don't think it is policy, that askaris can feel they can just any amount of money from these poor women. Sometimes they have been there the whole day and they haven't sold 20 or 40 or 50 or 100, what they are being asked to give. And most of the time, they are asked to give all that, maybe what they have collected that day. And she's going home, cannot even put food on the table. And I think we need to have very stiff penalties for those askaris who harass these vendors. Because unless we find a way of protecting those very needy mothers, women, I'm talking of mothers mainly because for me, they are the majority. We also have these other, those who hawk other items, but these mothers are the ones who have educated a lot of people by those vending businesses. You find women carrying things on their head, going around the streets, the city, the houses, vending, selling. They deserve better than they really get. So I thank those who produced this bill. But my worry is because we pass the bills, you discuss them here, but the implementation is very low. I think the implementation mechanism, we need to look at the committee that's supposed to see that the implementation is done, so that bills which are worthwhile, like this one, are not again put on the shelf to gather dust, as opposed to helping those whom they are supposed to help. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Amanga Millicent.
Asante, Madam Speaker. Ningependa kuunga mkono mswada huu, na ni mswada mzuri sana ambao umeletwa na mwenyekiti wa komiti ya uchuuzi na utalii. Madam Speaker, aliyeongea mbele yangu Mama Senator Beth aliyatoa maneno mengine kwa kinywa changu. Yeye aliweka kama implementation, utendaji. Kuna miswada mizuri sana ambayo tunapitisha kwenye bunge, lakini tukipitisha inakuwa utendaji wake ama ile vile Senator alisema implementation hamna. Mswada huu, Madam Speaker, hata kama tungeweza kuweza vile alisema hiyo implementation, mswada ule kuna mswada ulipitishwa kwenye nyumba hii, mswada wa majiji makubwa na majiji madogo, mswada wa mwaka 2015 kwa kimombo ni Urban Center Towns and Urban Centers Towns Bill. Huo mswada, Madam Speaker, ulikuwa uone kila jiji kubwa na ndogo ziwe na manager, ziwe na board ama ile kamati ambayo inaangalia utendakazi ama maendeleo ya zile jiji. Lakini Madam Speaker, mpaka wa leo hatujaweza kufanya vile hiyo mswada tuliopitisha. Nairobi, Mombasa, majiji yetu yote makuu, Madam Speaker, hadi sasa hatuna meneja wa jiji. Na huu mswada nikiangalia, kama tungekuwa na meneja wa jiji kwa hizi majiji na vijiji, town ndogo na kubwa, tungeweza kutimiza vitu zingine ambazo zimependekezwa kwenye huu mswada. Na ningependa kumwomba mwenye seneta ambaye alikuja na huu mswada aone vile atashikanisha huu mswada wachuuzi reja na huu mswada mwingine ambao uliopitishwa mwaka 2015. Madam Speaker, hapa Nairobi ndio tumekuwa na shida kubwa sana ya wachuuzi reja. Kila wakati utaona kina mama zetu, dada zetu, vijana wetu wa jiji wakiwa wanakimbizana na watu ambao wanaitwa kanjo, askari. Na hawa kanjo wanatumia uwezo wao ama nguvu zao za kiserikali kuwadhoofisha, kuwaangaisha wafanyibiashara wa jiji la Nairobi. Na Nairobi ndio iko na idadi kubwa sana ya hawa wachuuzi. Madam Speaker, nimetembea nchi za nje na nitapeana mfano wa Thailand, ambapo wako na soko ambayo inaitwa weekend market, ambapo kila mwisho wa Ijumaa kuna barabara katikati la jiji limetengwa speciali kwa hao wachuuzi. Pia kila jioni kutoka saa 12 mpaka usiku wote kuna barabara kadhaa katikati la jiji limetengwa kwa hao wachuuzi. Na wale wachuuzi wengine wenye maduka na wale mabonyenye wanafanya biashara yao mchana, ikifika saa 12 wanafunga, kisha wale wachuuzi rejareja wanakuja na vibanda zao zile za kufunga. Ni vibanda ambazo unafungua, unaweka mali yako, unauzia hapo na unaweza kufunga. Na biashara hiyo ya wachuuzi rejareja na hiyo weekend market kule Thailand inaleta hata ushuru kubwa sana kwa serikali, kwa sababu ni soko ambao limepangwa. Hata wale ambao kama county government ambao wanachukua ushuru, inakuwa rahisi hao kuchukua ushuru kwa sababu tayari wana sheria, wamepangwa vile. Kama ni mahali watu wanafaa kuuza vitu ya soko, inakuwa ni vitu ya soko, na inakuwa hata ni rahisi kuangalia standards ya hizi vyakula ambavyo vinauzwa kwenye soko. Inakuwa rahisi hata mwenye kununua anajua barabara hii ni barabara ya mboga, barabara nyingine ni barabara ya nguo, barabara nyingine ni barabara ambayo inauza vitu aina mbalimbali. Madam Speaker, kile ambacho kidogo sikubaliani na mswada hii ni ile kuleta serikali kuu ndio wale wachuuzi rejareja waende kujiandikisha kule kwenye serikali kuu. Madam Speaker, town zetu ziko na matakwa mbalimbali. Kama jiji la Nairobi, siwezi linganisha na jiji la Lamu. Madam Speaker, tukisema tuwe tunaleta wachuuzi wetu wote wawe wanaangaliwa kule kwenye serikali kuu, basi tunaenda nyuma kwa ile shida ambayo saizi tunaangalia, ambayo inaitwa ile ambayo tunaangalia, na nyumba hii ilipeana committee speciali kuangalia mess. Kuna ile committee ambayo imewekwa kuangalia vile serikali kuu iliweza kuagiza vifaa vya hospitali kwenye county zote. Na shida ambayo tuko naye ni kwamba iliagiza bila kuangalia mahitaji ya county mbalimbali. Kuna county ziko na tayari zilikuwa zimenunua hizo vifaa, lakini zililetewa hizo vifaa. Kuna county ambazo unapata hazina nguvu za umeme, haina maji, lakini inaletewa vifaa ambazo zinatakiwa kutumia umeme. Lakini ingeachiwa county yenyewe ijifanyie, ingejua kama hatuna umeme, basi wacha tununue kifaa ambacho kinaweza tumia generator ama diesel, mafuta ya diesel. Kwa hivyo sheria hii kuiweka kwa wachuuzi waende kujiandikisha kule kwenye serikali kuu itakuwa ngumu, kwa sababu kila jiji kama Nairobi inaelewa wafanyikazi wake. Hiyo ingeachiwa county yenyewe, kwa sababu tuko kwa serikali ya ugatuzi. Tungeacha county yenyewe na labda county assembly ndio iweze kutengeneza zile sheria, zile regulations ambazo wale wafanyibiashara wanaweza kuzifuata. Madam Speaker, mswada wachuuzi wengi unapata ni kina mama na ni vijana, ambao kina mama unapata mara nyingi hata wanakuja na watoto wao kwenye lile soko. Saa hizi kaunti nyingi zinapoteza pesa kutoka pesa za ushuru kwa sababu biashara hii haijaweza kuwekwa kwa mpango. Kama hapa nitapeana mfano wa Nairobi kwa sababu ndipo naishi na hapo ndio naelewa zaidi. Utapata wachuuzi jioni kama wameweka kwa sababu haijapewa mpangilio, wanafanya ni kama kuiba. Wanakaa kuangalia kama kanjo yule anakuja na nani anakuja next, na kuna wale hata wanakuja wanawadanganya, wanawaambia ndio yule kanjo anakuja. Unapata mama anabeba vitu yake, unapata manyanya yake imeanguka na anapoteza vitu nyingi sana. Na wale kanjo saa zingine wakija wanamchukua yule mama. Wengine kuna wafanyabiashara wengine kina mama hata wanabakwa hapa Nairobi. Lakini na kwa sababu ya hiyo hawezi rokota ile ushuru kutoka kwa hao wafanyabiashara. Hata wakikuwa wanauza hawawezi kuwa wanaokota ushuru kwa sababu hawana ile wakati ambao ataweza kaa na yule mfanyabiashara aweze kulipa ushuru. Kwa hivyo, Madam Speaker, ningependa kusupport huu mswada, lakini yule mwenye mswada aweze kuangalia hiyo maneno ya kuingiza serikali kuu, uhusiano wa serikali kuu na serikali ya kaunti. Asante, Madam Speaker.
Asante, Senator. Senator Masitsa Naomi Shionga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this, the Street Vendors Protection and Livelihood Bill. Madam Speaker, I want first of all to congratulate the sponsor of the bill because the bill is right in time, and the bill is actually going to assist the ordinary mwananchi, where most of the population in our country belong or they earn their living from. Madam Speaker, I'll start by saying that I really disagree with the bill when it comes to, as much as I support it, when it comes to the headquarters being in Nairobi. Just as my colleagues have said, not everything shall be in Nairobi. Let people remember that as much as we had everything, the headquarters being in Nairobi, most of our functions have been devolved. And then we do not need to have Nairobi being again based as a headquarter unit that shall be coordinating the vendors' activities, or even when it comes to licensing. That one my colleagues have said, but I also want to stress that let it be decentralized so that they facilitate. Again, these vendors, when you look at them, they are small earners. They are people who actually have low-income earners. So coming to Nairobi or being facilitated from Nairobi, it becomes a hell because their living income or their income is very little, so it cannot even, it even surpasses when it comes to transport for them to be facilitated from Nairobi. Another thing that I like in the bill is that the registration. The bill is looking at registration, especially when it comes to Article 16. And when you look at Article 16, a person shall not engage into street vending activities unless they are registered as street vendors and in possession of valid vending license from the relevant county. Madam Speaker, when you look at the registration, in addition to that, this registration does not only deal with maybe identification. Apart from the identification, it also facilitates people from knowing who the right vendors in this particular case are, because some are imposters and they pose as vendors or street vendors, whereas they are thieves. And so if at all a vendor has a registration, has identification, and maybe they have uniforms or tags, it will be very easy for us to identify them and know that we are dealing with the right population or the right traders as much as we are buying their goods or services that they are selling to us or to the public. Another thing is about the relocation. My colleagues also have talked about relocation. I would like to argue that relocation is a very good input in this bill because proper relocation of these vendors, especially when it's for the purpose of when they want to take the land or when they want to take the location where the vendors have set up. It is good for them to be given proper compensation, because if you go and disorganize somebody who has set up maybe let's say a less than 1,000 stall, and you relocate that person, where do you expect the same person to get her living from or his living from? So it is good for them if they are relocated. Let them be identified, prior arrangements for identification, whereby they can be given proper place where they can get where they can continue with their business. And again, compensation can facilitate the continuity in their process of businesses, because most of them actually depend on this business, and most of them also live below a dollar. So it is good for them to be handled well, when they are being relocated to a better place, where again they will get their goods and services being sold to, or where they will get the market for their properties that they are selling. And also they will also be respecting the rights of these vendors without violation, as we have seen in the recent past, where vendors are being mishandled and their properties being lost, which is not a good thing, and which causes violation, and it is not even properly, they are not properly handled. Another thing that I really support in this bill, or article that I support in this bill, is where when it comes to handling of food, proper basic requirements, especially when we look at the toilet, clean water, security, and shelter. And this is identified in Article 11, where county governments, for this case, shall facilitate essential facilities prior to the designation of periodic market under subsection 1, including but not limited to security, solid waste disposal, water, lighting, and parking facilities where necessary. This one is very important because, and I support it fully, because these people are human beings. They are handling food. They are people who are handling commodities that are going to be consumed by the public. And so it is very important for them to be handled, to be given the required basic needs, so that they can, when they are facilitating this, they are also they have also made the requirement that they need, so that when they are handling the food, they have the disposal, solid waste disposal handled in a correct way, or put in a correct way. They have clean water because they are handling food. They have lighting because some go beyond working hours, and parking facilities where necessary, how they can actually load and offload their goods when needed. So I think this bill has come at the right time. It is a good bill. I like it, and I support the sponsor. And another thing that I would like also to say, it is about the payment. And this is in 16. Where the payment and the licensing. These vendors, most of them, if you look at them, they are small traders. And when we say about the licensing and the payment of this licensing, surely most of them are youth and mothers. Let the payment be limited to what they can afford, and not to, when they are doing this particular trade, to feel like they are just being exploited. So I support this bill, and my colleagues have talked a lot about it. And I say the sponsor of this bill actually has worked around it, and all the amendments that will be needed shall be done. And I actually support it fully, and we shall be looking at it again and again in the committee, because it falls under Trade Committee, where I am a member. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senators. There being no other request, I would like to now call on the mover to respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to respond to this bill. Madam Speaker, the owner of this bill is away in an official duty in Mombasa, and therefore, being a member of this committee, I take this opportunity to thank all members who have contributed to this bill and gave us support. And therefore, Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 61(3), I request that you defer putting the question to another day. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. I therefore defer the putting of the question to the next business day. Honorable Senators, the order paper having been reviewed earlier, reorganized earlier, I now defer order number 8. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, report of the ad hoc committee on tea.
Honorable Senators, the chairperson of the ad hoc committee is away, and so I defer order number 10. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, free administration of the snake bites and venom in public health facilities.
Honorable Senators, order number 11, Senator Beatrice Kwamboka is away, and so I defer order number 11. Next order.
Order number 12, motion, engagement of community health workers by county governments.
Honorable Senators, the Honorable Senator Rose Nyamunga, the mover of the motion, is away on official trip out of the country, so I defer order number 12. Next order.
Order number 13, motion, report on the third statutory meeting of the Committee on Economic Development, Regional Integration and Natural Resources of the Forum of Parliaments of the International Conference of the Great Lakes Region, FPICGLR.
Honorable Senators, the Honorable Senator Samuel Bokisho is away, and for that reason, I defer order number 13. Honorable Senators, there being no other business, it is now time to adjourn the House, and the Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 8th October 2019 at 2:30 p.m.